Welcome to the special Saturday edition of the Tough Decisions podcast called Step Up Your Game with Dan. Each Saturday, Dan will be discussing topics related to making better decisions in business to increase your productivity and sales. And now, your host, Dan Hanford.
On today's episode of Step Up Your Game with Dan, I want to cover 4 top secret methods to getting free marketing to promote your brand, your product, or your service. So the first thing I want to talk about of these 4 things, number 1 is make sure that you're trying to always create news about your product or service. Last Saturday, we talked about Richard Branson, and he is a phenomenal person when it comes to creating, free media coverage, if you will, around some adventures or different things that he's doing in his own personal life. And so it brings a lot of free coverage for him. That's kind of what we're talking about here. Not exactly, trying to go out and do an adventure or different things like that. And I'll give you a couple of ideas as we move forward on the podcast today. But the primary job of news outlets, which a lot of us forget, is to bring news to the people who are reading or listening or watching their particular news outlet, whether that be newspaper, radio, TV, podcasts like this one, or YouTube influencers or bloggers or vloggers or, whatever the case may be. The primary job is to provide news to their listeners or readers or their audience in general. And now some of these might be there to entertain you, but for the most part, they're there for news. And sometimes that news can obviously be entertaining, or they can make a little spin on it to make it more entertaining. So there's a couple of ideas I want to give you about how to get noticed by these various news outlets, because they're constantly trying to find new material to fill into their funnel of material. And so number 1 is, if you can try to solve a vital problem with their particular audience that they have, you will get noticed by them. And what I mean by that is not just, your local newspaper. Obviously, if you're a local service business, that could be one avenue for you. But I'm talking about really somebody in your particular niche. For example, if you're a dentist or you are a massage therapist and you have particular trade journals or different events or conferences or, different influencers in those spaces, if you can try to solve a problem for their audience, they will bring you onto their podcast or their show or their YouTube channel or, TV or radio or newspaper or in their trade journals. They want that information to provide to their audience because they want to be able to give that value to their audience. And so if you can solve a vital problem for their audience, or if you can show their audience how to achieve something, that's another way to do it. Another way is to, try to provide a sample to these various influencers of your product or your service so that they can, have it, tangible wise to be able to experience it first. Because if they can experience it and like it and love it, then they're more apt to want to give you more, notice, more coverage on their particular outlet. Another thing you can do is to, try to, sponsor a contest. Like, for example, if you're a local business and you're trying to get some local media coverage, you can, sponsor, say, like if you're a restaurant, you can sponsor a dinner for 4 for like the worst recipe that somebody can come up with or the best recipe or whatever the case may be. If you're a pet store, you can provide a free month of food for the best dog photos that are shared and they tag you on it on Instagram or Pinterest or whatever media, channel you want to use. And that can give you some free media coverage for it. Because as you know, the more times people tag you or, mention you in a post, the more coverage you're going to get for that. Even as far as that pet store example, you can even have the people that are on the social media channel be the ones that are voting for that particular winner. They can get a free month of food or whatever. Now, some of these things when I talk about, giving away a dinner for 4 and free month of food for a dog and various things like that, some of those things are going to cost you money. I mean, when we talk about free marketing, meaning that you're not actually paying and writing a check to a news outlet, radio station, TV station, or podcaster, or newspaper, or YouTube, or whatever the case may be. So you might have to obviously pay to give away some food or something like that. But I think you kind of get the gist of what I'm talking about here. The other thing is when you can also try to sponsor an award. If there's a local, charity or a local, event that's going on and you can sponsor an award, a lot of times you can get free coverage around that. Local media outlets love homegrown success stories. So if you have some sort of a success story that's surrounding your business, which a lot of us do, a lot of these media outlets like to have these stories about, hey, this is the town and the city where this person grew up and here's the success that they they had. And the other thing you can do is take your product or your service, and instead of just donating it to, or not donating, but, allowing that news outlet to try your product or service, but you can also provide a donation to a local charity for your product or service, and that can get you some recognition as well. I would suggest making sure that you align with a charity that really, fits in line with your beliefs and, your particular product or service, and that can really truly help them, not just donating it just to get the notoriety, but to really donate it to a local charity that you feel like could really benefit from your product or your service, and, build those relationships with those local charities as well. So that was the first one, creating news about your product or service. Number 2 is going to be turning the heads of news outlets. And you must be consistent with this. You've got to have some sort of plan in place. You've got to have some consistency with it. Just to try to turn the heads of news outlets once, a lot of times it's not going to work. It's not going to happen. But when they can constantly see you over and over and over trying to turn their heads, that's when they will start to pull the trigger and say, yes, I want them on my particular news outlet. And so the first approach is what we call the shotgun approach. And this is by getting a list of all of the media outlets that are in your particular niche and just blasting it out, particularly via email or, snail mail or whatever, and sending out those news outlets a news alert about whatever your particular product or service is. That'll help to kind of turn those heads. Now, I suggest doing that at least on a monthly basis to turn those heads. Otherwise, it won't happen. You do it once and then stop. You're going to say, oh, it didn't work. I didn't get anybody. But you need to be consistent with it. It might take you, 5, 6, 7 times of sending it to a particular news outlet. But if you can send it to, 50, 60, 70, 100, 250 news outlets that are in your particular niche, depending on the size of your niche, will depend on how many news outlets there are. But the more you can send out, the more likelihood that they're going to raise their hand and say, yep, I want to run that article. I want to run that news story. I want to provide this to my audience. And so the next thing you want to do after you do some sort of a shotgun approach is really try to hone in and identify some key people within your niche that you can contact directly, either via phone call, where you can pick up the phone and say, hey, I sent you this article, wanted to know what your thoughts were on it, and get some feedback from them. And a lot of times when you make that phone call, instead of just sending it out, it'll increase the chances of them actually running it. I wouldn't spend a lot of time calling every single one of the people you send it to on the shotgun approach, but I would identify a few key people that you think would be more likely to run your article and try to contact them. And it might take you 10 or 15 times of contacting them to actually reach them. But once you do, you will be turning heads. People will be talking about you. And the other thing you can do instead of just calling them is obviously you can email them. You can also send them some snail mail directly to them. And then one of the things that I like in our now day and age, we're able to use technology like LinkedIn. A lot of people think, oh, LinkedIn's not really anything. It's not going to do much. But I will tell you, LinkedIn is very powerful. It's been very powerful for us in building and growing this podcast. And so I would suggest making sure that you find these people on LinkedIn and messaging them and trying to reach out to them, because there's a lot of people that you can now contact through LinkedIn that will allow you to be able to promote your brand and get some more free coverage, if you will, for your brand, your product, or your service. The next thing here on the list of the 4 top secret methods is number 3, always looking for angles in your product or your business or your brand to be able to create news. So I want to give you a story here. So I heard recently about a limo service that had a customer that was really upset. And this customer called into a local radio station to complain on this radio show about this limo service. And I'll call this limo service, Alpha. Okay. So limo service Alpha had a customer that did not have a very good experience one night when they were, celebrating a birthday. It was a husband and a wife, and they were going to be celebrating a birthday. So the husband, rented a limo service and, had him pick him up and, go take him for a night on the town. Well, the limo service was it was a bad situation. It was a bad service. The limo broke down and, the customer was really upset. So the customer called a radio station to complain about how terrible the service was that night, that the limo service that the limo broke down, the driver was kind of rude, and the manager at the limo service, Alpha, would not provide any type of refund. They were kind of belligerent. They just really weren't, handling this customer situation very well. And so this lady had called up to the radio station and just started complaining about limo service Alpha. And guess what? limo service Bravo heard about this. And so the limo service Bravo heard that station talking about how bad limo service Alpha was. And so they immediately called into the station and talked with the radio talk show host and offered to give this lady and her husband a free night on the town to be able to help solve her problem. Well, this helped limo service Bravo get lots of free media coverage. Now, you might think, well, you didn't really give limo service Alpha a chance to be able to make it right. Well, they did. The radio show host actually called limo service Alpha's manager on the air, and limo service Alpha's manager was rude and continued to be rude and continued to refuse the refund to the customer because of that bad experience. And so limo service Bravo capitalized on that. They said, hey, we're getting this bad media coverage. Everybody's going to think all limo drivers are terrible. So they called up the radio station, gave this free night on the town to help solve the problem for that couple that had a bad experience. And then for the rest of the show, the host continued to talk about how nice it was for limo service B to be able to offer them a free night on the town in their limo and, provide some really good service for them. And so limo service Bravo had a great, 1 hour of free media coverage because that radio show talk show host for the rest of the hour continued to talk about it because he was so enthralled with how well it happened, what had happened with limo service Bravo coming in and just, saving the day, if you will. So that's a very good example of, somebody looking for an angle to be able to create a news story. The next thing here I would encourage you to look at is doing some sort of community service. There's lots of different ways to be able to provide community service with your business or your product or service. One of the ideas that I came up with was having a day where your entire team can donate some of their time to be able to help a local charity. It doesn't matter really where or what you do. A lot of these local charities need volunteers and they need people to help them in various aspects of their charity. And so to be able to have your entire team donate some of their time to be able to help that local charity can create some news around your business. And the other thing you can do is select a particular day where a portion of all of your sales gets donated to that local charity. And, one example I like to give in this particular situation is Chick-fil-A. We have Chick-fil-A, restaurants here in our town, and, almost, every one of their slow nights or slow days, if you will, they come up with something that they can do, whether it be donating to a local charity, or a lot of times I see schools or booster clubs, coming in and saying, bringing, and they promote that if you come to Chick-fil-A on Tuesday night or Wednesday night or Thursday night, those are usually the slow nights, that they will donate a portion of the entire proceeds that they collect that day to that particular charity. And it helps to promote the brand because you have other people promoting the brand and Chick-fil-A is not even having to do it. We have church, my wife and I attend here in South Carolina. And in the middle of our services, we have a church and a school combined, and they talk about how they're having a Chick-fil-A school night, at our church. And so in front of the entire, auditorium of people that are in our church, several hundred people, it's being promoted that Chick-fil-A, go to Chick-fil-A, go to Chick-fil-A. And so that's another example of how to get free media coverage, not necessarily in a news outlet, but in a church like that too. It's a good way to kind of get that additional coverage. And the biggest thing I would caution you here is make sure that when you do a donation of all your sales on a particular day or time frame or whatever, make sure it's not on the profits. Make sure it's on the overall gross sales during that particular time frame, because it's just not right. There's no way for you to be able to control what kind of profits you make or anything like that. But really, look at it and say all of the sales, the gross sales that happen. So if you sell $1,000 worth of product, you're donating 10%. Give $100. Don't say we're going to, donate the profits and then, you spend $1,000 promoting it and you only sell $1,000 and so there's no profit. So that local charity doesn't get it. That's not that. I don't feel like that's the right way to do it. So I would suggest you do is if you do that particular, all of your sales gets donated, a portion of all of your proceeds gets donated to a local charity. Make sure it's off the gross sales, not on the overall profits. Number 4, this is one that I've used recently. It's called piggybacking on other news media, meaning news articles, lots of news that's happening right now. So one of the things I found out last week was that Amazon started to launch a program called Amazon Delivery Service Partner Program. And they're looking for entrepreneurs to be able to take over and start their own delivery service in various markets. And obviously, when they made that announcement, there's a lot of media coverage around it, and the stock prices for UPS and FedEx dropped that day that was released because, of course, investors are a little bit worried about that if Amazon goes into the delivery service business, then they're going to be hurting. And so one of the things I thought about was I was like, I should create a YouTube video and an article on how somebody can get into that space with Amazon. And so I did this to test and to help promote the podcast a little bit. And so I did a video. Didn't take me very long. I think the video might be maybe not even 4 minutes. I think it might be 2 minutes long or something like that. And I put it on our YouTube channel. And if you want to see it, you can go to our YouTube channel. Just, go to our website, and on there's a link to our YouTube channel. Just go to toughdecisions.net. But on the YouTube channel is a video where I talk about how entrepreneurs can find the application to be able to apply for this. And I wrote a 1,000 to 1,200 word article somewhere around in there on the various reasons why this might be a good idea and some things to be cautious about, and basically just some tips and tricks about starting to work with Amazon and the differences between their Amazon Flex program, which is just basically being a driver for Amazon and getting paid an hourly wage, versus starting your own fleet of vehicles, which could be 20 to 40 vehicles. And so I just basically did a lot of research on it, and I started to capitalize and piggyback on that news that was happening at the time. And I didn't know how well it was going to go. And I wouldn't say it was it didn't go viral or anything, but in the first week, we had over 1,000 downloads of that video, and I didn't promote it at all. All I did was shoot the video, put it on YouTube, and then drove people from that YouTube video to our website. And so far, since I've launched that in the last week, it is the #1 article on our website. And I didn't pay for any advertising, and there's no pay-per-click or no Google advertising or anything. I didn't even post it on Facebook. All I did is put the YouTube video up and made sure that there were certain keywords in that video that was when people were on YouTube searching for this new program, that they would find my video and then find the article on our website and be driven over to it. And of course, at the end of the video, I talk about how I would love for them to be able to download our podcast and be part of our family of entrepreneurs that are trying to grow with each other and learn from other entrepreneurs and the tough decisions that they make. And so I would say that's a great example of how you can piggyback on other news media. So always be looking for other, ideas and news articles that you can sometimes piggyback on to be able to promote your business as well. Okay. So those are the 4 things. Let me just recap them real quick. So #1 is going to be able to create news about your product or service. #2 is turn the heads of news outlets and have a plan and be consistent. And #3 is always be looking for angles to create new news around your brand, your product, or your service. And then also try to piggyback on other current events and current news that's happening right now in the media, like I did with this Amazon Delivery Service Partner program and promoting my podcast, or our podcast, because it's both my wife podcast and my podcast. The other thing I would suggest that you could do with these types of articles, and once you start to get some of this coverage, it will be an exponential benefit for you, because now you can start to build credibility with your customers and your clients to be able to include excerpts from these different media outlets that you received, and it builds additional credibility. It builds additional notoriety that you can include those articles or those links that you receive and give it to them. The next thing I would suggest that you do is, whenever you get this free media coverage, send a thank you note. Don't just send an email. Don't just, send a LinkedIn message or anything like that. Send an actual thank you note and thank them for, that extra coverage, because these people are humans too, and they like being appreciated. Another thing I like to do, if you don't want to spend the time of, sending out a snail mail thank you note, you can shoot a video. There are websites out there where you can shoot a quick video and email it to somebody, or shoot a quick video and text it to somebody, and just, shoot them a quick video, say, hey, thanks. And, hold up a picture of the article or the link and just say, hey, thanks for this additional coverage. It means a lot. Really appreciate it. And look forward to working with you some more and providing some more content for your audience. Again, these people are humans, and they want this additional, notoriety, but they want this additional gratitude, so be thankful for that extra coverage that you get, because the more thankful you're going to be, the higher chances are that you're going to have more media coverage from that person. So at the bottom line here, I want to mention to you that in order for any of this stuff to work, you have to have a plan and you have to be consistent. So if you want to get this free publicity and this free coverage, have a plan, execute that plan, and be consistent with that plan. So I want to thank you so much for listening today. I hope you can stay tuned next week and subscribing to our podcast as I help you step up your game with Dan.
Make sure to subscribe to our Tough Decisions podcast channel to listen in on Sunday for our next specialty show to help you make better decisions. It's called Survive and Thrive with Danae. Do you want to nominate a highly successful entrepreneur or real estate investor to be a guest on this show? Email us at dan@toughdecisions.net. Help us spread the word about the Tough Decisions podcast with your friends, and also take time right now to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, Facebook, or your favorite platform. You've been listening to the Tough Decisions Show.